Hey Quad Bros, what's going on guys? Welcome back to the channel. Glad to have you guys here and hope you guys are doing well. Welcome to our 3-part video series on going over tanks and Enlisted. This is going to be kind of the ultimate tank guide, at least for the current state of the game as of May of 2022. So we're going to be trying to go over the absolute basics of tanking in this video. Video number 2 will be going over the in-game battle, your tactics, your situational awareness, how you should be playing the game and how you should be playing with your tanks. And then video 3 will be some advanced tips and tricks for being better tankers in Enlisted. So for this video, again, it is going to be the absolute basics of tanking in Enlisted. It's going to be moving around. It's going to be shooting, firing your weapon, the different UI and stuff like that. So if you guys kind of are already experiencing that, you don't need to watch this. You can skip to the next video. But I would recommend you guys leave a like and a comment down below so other people can see this video, and leave a comment for some tips for new tankers, guys. It really help them out. Share the love, share some of your veteran tank experience. Now let's get into the video itself. So before you guys even think about spawning in a tank, before you even think about clicking, start battle and searching for a game, there's things that you need to know about your vehicles. There's things you need to know about your tank, and more importantly, you need to know the enemy tanks. Okay, so let's click on our M4A176 Sherman here. This is also how you switch tanks. So if you needed to switch between the tanks, you're going to come to this screen here. Not all tanks can be put in all squads. So for example, the M10 GMC can only be in the Tanker 3 squad. The Jumbo Sherman can only be in the Tanker 2 squad. And then the Tanker 1 squad has the Stuart, the Scott, and the M4A2 Sherman. Again, this is all different for all the different factions in the game, but it is a rule of thumb that not all tanks are in all squads. So you can bring multiple tanks if you have a premium account or you've bought some extra squad slots. Now, looking here at the stats, we can see here the 76 Sherman. Obviously, it's an M4A176. It has a 76mm M1 cannon. It has a 12.7mm M2 HB 50 cal machine gun, and it has a 30 cal M1919 as its coaxial. This is not told to you guys, but I will tell you now. The 30 cal is the coaxial, and the 50 cal up here is the 50 cal, I suppose. Now you can also see the hull armor, the turret armor. Keep in mind, guys, this does not account for any kind of angling or sloping of the armor. So while yes, this is 64mm of armor, it is effectively more like maybe 90, a little bit higher than that, because it is angled at I don't know, like 60 degrees or something like that. I don't know, something. But it is angled. But just keep in mind, this is not entirely true. This gets skewed. So we can talk a little bit about the armor now. This armor viewing thing is not particularly useful in my opinion as of right now. I'd like to see a protection analysis the way that War Thunder has, so we can simulate shots from different vehicles. But it is important to kind of at least take a look at this and just kind of take a peek. Again, it's not super useful because a lot of the things, like say the Jumbo, have skewed information. Like here it says, oh, it's only 50mm, but the reason for that is because they welded another sheet of armor on top of this, so you have a 63mm armor with a 38.1 on top of it. And so if you want, you can see 114 here, but it's also angled, so its effective thickness is much higher than this, much higher than 114. So again, it just kind of gets a little skewed. So kind of take this armor viewing mode with a grain of salt. It's not super relevant, but it is nice to take a peek at it. And I do recommend you guys at least take a peek at it to get a general understanding of the armor, especially the flat parts and their effective thickness. Now, the extremely relevant part, and the thing that you guys should be spending a lot of time understanding and looking at here, is the X-ray viewing mode. Okay, the X-ray viewing, understanding where the crew is located in the vehicle, understanding where the ammo is located in the vehicle, and understanding the gun itself. Right, so we can see here the Jumbo Sherman has a reload time of 5 seconds, a 75mm gun. It has a turret aim speed of 24 degrees per second and a vertical aim speed of 4 degrees per second. So that's very useful information. It turns its gun pretty quickly, right? Its vertical gun aim speed is not particularly relevant, and it's got a pretty good reload time, right? These are all important, relevant things for you to understand. It's also good to have a general understanding of the power of your gun. If you guys don't have a PhD in War Thunder, this is probably going to be a little bit harder. If you haven't played War Thunder, you're not going to know these things. So I'd recommend you guys either just download and jump into War Thunder and use the protection analysis in that game. It's very easy. You can find tons of guides and information using that online. But more importantly, if you just want a general rule of thumb and you don't want to waste your time doing that, which is perfectly reasonable, the general rule of thumb, the higher this number here is, this caliber of the gun, and the longer this barrel is, the better it's going to be. So the 75 millimeter M3 cannon here is pretty short, and it's 75 millimeters, so it's, you know, it's 75, so it's definitely better than, say, the Stewart's little 37 millimeter. But if we compare it to, say, the 76, we can see it's a lot longer, and it's also 76 millimeters. So this thing is typically going to have better penetration. Again, all the people who have PhDs in War Thunder are going to be like furiously typing comments right now and aren't going to get to this part of the video, and they're going to be like, quadro, actually, and, you know, fine, whatever, guys. Yes, it is not always the case. Sometimes lower numbers have better penetration. Sometimes, you know, like the 75 millimeter on the Panther has better pen than the Tiger's 88. But guys, as a general rule of thumb, the higher this number is, the better your penetration is going to be. The longer this barrel is, the better your penetration is going to be. It's a decent rule of thumb for those of you that don't have PhDs in War Thunder. Now, again, you're going to want to be checking out the enemy vehicle. So say you're playing as the Allies in Normandy, you're going to want to look at enemy vehicles. Okay, you know, if you're in a Panther, or if you're in a Sherman, you're going to want to know where you can fight enemy Panthers at. Again, it says hull armor 80, but it's more like 120, right? Turret armor is 100 millimeters in the front, but, like, you know, about 100. But again, guys, you're going to want to know at the X-ray, because you're going to want to look for these ammo racks. The ammo racks are where you're going to want to be shooting. You're going to want to know where the crew is. The important thing here, guys, is knowing where the ammo racks are, because in Enlisted, contrary to War Thunder, crew take very little time to switch seats. So taking out the gunner is really not going to be doing a whole lot. Most vehicles in this game have just straight up AP shells. At least the American tanks do, and a lot of the German tanks also just have straight solid shot AP rather than APHE. And even when they do have APHE, the APHE is pretty toned down, and crew members are very, very tanky and Enlisted, and they switch seats very quickly. So even just taking out a gunner is not going to be a surefire way to get a second shot the way it could be in something like maybe War Thunder, right? They're just going to switch seats and then shoot back at you. So it's very useful to instead, you know, if you can, just go straight for the ammo rack. So knowing where these ammo racks are at is very important, and knowing where the crew is situated is also very, very important as well. So just study these things, guys. If you're playing as the Russians, know where your ammo rack is, know where the German ammo racks are, right? If you're playing as the Americans, same thing. If you're playing as the Germans, know where the American ammo racks are. Study this stuff. It will make you a better tanker, I promise, and it does not take that much time. Now, let's jump into the practice range here and drive around and talk a little bit about driving and the different UI elements in the tanks. All right, everybody, welcome to the practice range. This is a great place to go and test out all of the vehicles and figure out where you can penetrate enemy vehicles in Enlisted. This is a great tool to use. I recommend you guys, when you get a new tank, or if you're struggling to fight a specific enemy vehicle, you come to the practice range. There's tons of these vehicles everywhere, and you just drive around and see where you can penetrate these enemy vehicles on, which I'll show you here in just a second. But number one, before we get into any of that, there are 3 seats in a tank that you can actively control. There's a couple extra ones where if your crew gets knocked out, they'll move from there, the loader and the radio operator specifically. But the 3 that matter to you are the commander, the gunner, and the driver. Really just the commander and the driver, to be honest with you guys. The driver is just the driver hatch thing, but to be honest with you guys, you can see more in the commander view than you can anywhere else. Now, most tanks have a commander view. Some do not. Some, like the armored cars, like the AB-41, and I think maybe the Puma. I'm not 100% on the Puma. Or like the T-60, or like Panzer II. The small tanks don't have commander views. They will only have gunner views. So just keep that in mind. If you're in those vehicles, you do not have this view. But the majority of tanks in Enlisted do have the commander view, and this is where you want to be sitting most of the time. This gives you the best vision of the battlefield. This is going to be where you can see enemy infantry the best. You're going to be able to see enemy tanks and flashes from enemy vehicles and things like that. This is also going to be the best for fighting infantry, because you're going to be able to use your machine gun at a wide view, right? The thing about this commander view is that it does not account for distance, right? That circle in the middle is where my barrel is aiming. So if I wanted to fire at this Puma all the way at range here, right? If I fire at it, I'm gonna fall short because I don't fire that far. Okay, my shots do not go that far. You can also see that white circle is my gun reloading. If I want to fire at a distance here, I'm gonna have to switch to the gunner seat, right? And then now I have a extra little UI icon reticule there, and that tells me green means pin, green means go. That's where my shot's going to land. So I fire, and then I did hit the enemy vehicle. The problem with this is that your tanks have pretty poor dispersion a lot of the times, especially at range. So even if it says green, you're not guaranteed to penetrate because the shot could go wide. It could hit somewhere that you weren't quite aiming at that has a little bit extra armor, and you'll end up missing. So you can see here I'm aiming at the ammo rack on that Puma. Now I ended up hitting its breech, right? It might take an extra couple shots when you're firing at range. So you guys get the idea here. It's not always perfect, and even if it's red, I might end up penetrating anyway. Yeah, right. I hit his transmission there. But when you're in the gunner view, this is where you want to be when you're engaging enemy vehicles. Red means you will not pin. Yellow means you are probably not going to pin, and I don't recommend you guys ever take yellow shots. If you're taking yellow shots, something has gone wrong and you are doing a kind of Hail Mary last ditch effort, and that is bad news bears. But again, most of the time, guys, you're going to want to be in your commander seat, because the reason for this is you have the best field of view, you have your best situational awareness, which is incredibly important when you're tanking. You can also jump out of your tank hatch. So if you press control, you pop out of the top tank hatch. Most vehicles can do this. I think notably the T50 cannot, even though it should be able to. I'm not 100% sure why it can't, but most vehicles you can pop out. Most vehicles even have a top gun like we talked about before. So you can see here, easy peasy, right? It's got a 50 cal on top. You can spray down enemy infantry. You can do tons of damage when you're firing two machine guns. Now, when you fire your machine gun, you can see a red circle is going to fill up inside the white circle there. That is the heat of my machine gun. Once it maxes out, boom, it's going to go all the way down. And now I can't fire my machine gun. I'm pressing space, nothing is happening. And now that the barrel has been swapped out, we got a new barrel, we can start shooting again. You can overheat as many times as you want. I think the barrel swapping sound is just a neat thing for extra little immersion type deal. So just understand your machine gun can overheat. You can see its ammo in the bottom right. Different machine guns in Enlisted overheat and have different, belt capacities as opposed to others. So like Russian tanks have very low belt capacities, Italian tanks low belt capacities. They don't overheat as quickly. German MGs have, decent belt capacities, but they overheat really quickly, but they do a lot of damage. American MGs and British MGs, they have really high amounts of ammo. They have really good belt capacities, and then they also have very good overheating, right? They don't overheat very quickly. So MGs for the Americans typically are quite good. So now you guys understand MGs for shooting infantry. The last major thing is your AP versus your HE. So you can see we've got AP and HE on the right there. If we want to swap between them, remember AP for anti-tank, armor piercing, HE, high explosive for anti-infantry. If we want to swap, we just press R or whatever the button is on console. I think it's Y on console. And then you can see I still have AP loaded, right? I have to fire off my AP shell, and then now I'm loading up HE. Now I can fire off HE, and you can see the HE is going to be a much bigger explosion. It's going to do a lot more damage versus infantry. We'll talk about where to shoot and how to shoot infantry in the next video, but just understand HE is better for enemy infantry. You're going to do a lot more damage that way. But if I have HE loaded, say I fire off at some infantry and there's an enemy tank, I switch to AP. It's not going to swap in the middle of it, guys. I have to fire this shot off. You need to be very careful firing HE, because you will not be able to fire at enemy tanks for quite a while. If an enemy tank ends up surprising you, you're going to have to fire off that HE that's currently being loaded. That's why there's a perk in the game that lets you swap while loading. Again, we'll talk about that in a future video, but it is a very good perk. You can see now AP is loaded. We can't actually pin the side of this tiger because we're at a weird angle. You can see if we need to pin, right, we want to go to this site, right? Yellow's really not that good. Let's keep moving. Actually, we could probably pin the bottom. And keep moving. I'm kind of seeing green now. Saw some green. We can maybe pin here, right there. And we managed to penetrate through. We can see we even hit the ammo rack and didn't actually detonate the tank, right? There we go. Now we got the ammo rack. Now we detonated the tank, because we know where that ammo rack is, right? that's going to be a lot better. You can see we can hit the ammo rack, detonate the tank, while normally we wouldn't even be able to penetrate it, right? So just keep that in mind as you guys are playing. You need to understand where the ammo rack is, like I mentioned before. It's very, very important. Now, in the unlikely event that you need to get out of your tank because you're never going to get hit because you're such a good tanker because you're watching my video here. But in the unlikely event that you do get hit and you need to jump out, there are two ways to jump out. You can hold T, and this will take out just your crew member, your current crew member, and he will jump out. And then if you need to repair your tank, you're going to have a little thing that says hold T to repair your tank. And then you can just jump back in holding F. Now, if you want your whole crew to jump out, you're going to just press F instead of T. And this is going to make your entire crew jump out of the vehicle. Keep in mind your crew is very, very exposed while out of the vehicle. You probably don't want to do this unless you're just completely abandoning your tank and you think that you're not going to be able to salvage it. Most of the time, you're going to be better off just jumping out one guy at a time, repairing the vehicle, and then jumping back in. But that's how you jump out of the vehicle. If you get back in, your crew will jump back in as well. They'll fill up the slots just as they should, and you should be pretty fine. But that's it, guys. That is just about everything there is to tanking. We'll talk about driving and maneuvering around obstacles. Driving is not really hard. It's just WASD to move around, right? I wouldn't use the driver. Remember that tanks in World War II did not have neutral steering. They cannot turn in place the way that like a modern tank might be able to. So just know that. But yeah, that is it, guys. Let me know your guys' thoughts. Is there anything that I missed that you think are the absolute basics that you want me to answer? Let me know in the comments below. And also let me know your guys' tips for new tankers down in the comments below. Share that experience, share that love around. It would definitely help everybody out. Remember, you can join our community Discord and follow me, twitch.tv/HeyQuadro. I'd love to have you guys over there. The link for all that stuff's down in the description below. But without anything else, thank you for watching, guys, and I will see you guys next time. Take it easy. Or tank it easy.